Ladies and gents, good evening. This is a really auspicious occasion, the 60th anniversary Congress of the Grassland Society of Southern Africa, being held back in the Pietermaritzburg Midlands area, as all of our milestone congresses have been. And it's my pleasure to welcome the Mayor of Mkhize Municipality to give an opening address for our Congress. The Mayor, Chris Pappas, I asked how I should introduce him, and he said, just Chris, that's it. So Chris, over to you, please.
Good evening, everyone. Sanbonani. I'm just Chris because there are leaders who are born leaders, and there are leaders who are elected leaders. And the only people who are born leaders are kings and queens, and they remain kings and queens their whole lives. But in Zulu, you would say uyahola and uyabusa. Ukhola, you are elected. Ukubusa, it is a birthright. So mina ngiyahola because I was elected, not because ngiyabusa because I reign over people. So that's why I'm only Chris. I was born Chris, and I'll leave you Chris. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for choosing the Mkhize local municipality. Thank you very much for choosing Hilton as the place that you are holding your conference and your Congress. It is really a special place to myself, and I see a couple of familiar faces here. And those of you who unfortunately live just down the road in Pietermaritzburg, that's okay too. You're also welcome. But I just wanted to maybe take this opportunity to address a few things this evening in welcoming you. So firstly, I serve as the mayor of the Mkhize municipality, which is both rich in biodiversity, it is complex in governance, and it is deeply reliant on the very ecosystems that you are going to discuss today and over the next few days. We are living in times when science and local governments must work hand in hand, because the problems that we face, whether it is climate shocks, invasive species, water scarcity, land degradation, can't be solved by government alone, and they also can't be solved by science alone. So today, or this evening, the next few days, I'd like us to explore the intersection between governance and science, especially when we're talking about the ecosystems that we so rely on. These are the foundations of not only our currently, but also our future for our communities and indeed our country. Mkhize municipality is home to both rapidly growing urban areas such as Hilton and Howick, but also to immense urban sprawl in the areas like Mpophomeni, Emashingeni, KwaDulela, and surrounds. This diversity creates both an opportunity and a complexity. On one side, we have formally well-regulated developments, and on the other side, we have traditional and informal systems where governance is diffuse, tenure is unclear, and land use practices are shaped by culture and history as well as necessity. This mosaic of land management systems makes ecological governance a real challenge. In traditional areas, for example, we often see annual veld burning intended to stimulate early grass shoot for grazing. While the intention is rooted in experience and timing, the frequency of these burns can degrade the land, reduce biodiversity, and increase risk. This is in stark contrast to what we see in more formal areas, where block burn styles happen to be able to manage land. Bridging these two worlds, science-based land management and traditional knowledge systems, is essential. It begins with trust, inclusion, and education. I wanted to move on to a subject that's a little bit more concerning for our municipality, and I'll explain why, and that is alien invasive plants. In Mkhize, black wattle, bugweed, lantana, and other invasive species have spread aggressively, displacing indigenous vegetation, reducing grazing capacity, and drying up our rivers and wetlands. Yet the ability of local government to address this is limited. Environmental governance is largely the mandate of provincial and national departments, and I see a few of them here today. Local governments, particularly our small municipalities, and yes, we are a small municipality, simply don't have the legal authority, funding, or staff to enforce environmental regulations on private or communal land. Management currently falls on the landowner, but many landowners lack the resources or knowledge to manage these diverse invasives effectively. And in traditional land areas, ownership and responsibility is often unclear. This vacuum of governance is one of the greatest threats to our ecological health in this region. What we need is a new model of cooperative management, where science, government, landowners, and communities share both responsibility and benefit, where clearing aliens is not just a once-off job, but a sustained, scientifically informed process with support from government and incentives. Fire. Fire remains one of our biggest misunderstood tools for ecological management. And we know this here in Umgeni. In the last fire season, it was quite devastating for us. Many associate fire with destruction, and yes, poorly timed or unmanaged fire is disastrous. But in grassland ecosystems like ours, fire is essential. It clears vegetation, stimulates regrowth, and suppresses woody encroachment. Yet our fire regimes are fragmented. Commercial farmers may follow structured burn plans, while traditional communities often burn annually without scientific guidance. Urban edges live in fear of runaway fires, and municipal fire services are primarily geared towards emergencies and not ecological burns. Here again, your work matters. We need your guidance on fire intervals, best practices for fire mixed tenure landscapes, and strategies for peri-urban fire management that protect both people and ecosystems. And we need science to help bridge the gap between traditional fire practices and modern ecological understanding, so that community-led burning is safe, strategic, and sustainable. Umgeni is a grassland municipality, originally at least. These grasslands support grazing, water regulation, biodiversity, and carbon sequestration, but they are under severe threat. As I mentioned earlier, land in Umgeni municipality falls under a patchwork of management systems: freehold commercial farms, communal land, informal settlements, and traditional authorities. Each has its different rules, capacities, and priorities. In traditional and common areas, rotational grazing is rarely enforced. Overstocking, erosion, and poor fire management are common. Meanwhile, commercial farmers may implement rotational systems based on their assessments and the felt conditions. This disconnect has real-world consequences. Degraded grasslands lead to reduced carrying capacity and food insecurity, and ultimately more migration to urban areas which are already under pressure. But beyond the local impact, there is a broader danger. Poor grassland management directly affects our water systems. So let me be specific. The Umgeni catchment supports over 60% of the KwaZulu-Natal's economy. It supplies water to Pietermaritzburg, Durban, and everything in between. When grasslands degrade, water infiltration drops, runoff increases, and sediment chokes our dams and rivers. Aliens reduce stream flow. Poorly timed fires leave soil bare. The result, less water, lower quality, and higher treatment costs. So if we fail to manage these grassland, we're not only losing biodiversity, we're undermining the very economic backbone of our province and our region. So this is why your workshop and your Congress is very important and is critical to what we do. We must rethink how we look at our grasslands, not as passive spaces, but a dynamic system that requires governance, investment, and care. And this is where your expertise in indigenous knowledge, participatory planning, and land restoration can shift the paradigm. Because the future of grassland management is not in exclusion, but in collaboration between scientists, traditional leaders, farmers, municipality, but most importantly, our local communities. We've all heard it, that water is life, and Umgeni, that is our greatest vulnerability. The Umgeni River catchment, including the Moya and Lions rivers, is the engine room of our region. It is under strain, the weight of poor land management, urban sprawl, invasive species, and climate change. We've seen reduced flows, increased siltation, and greater competition for limited water supply. The infrastructure required to treat and distribute water becomes more costly. And all of these puts pressure on municipalities, residents, and industries alike. Catchment protection is therefore not just an environmental add-on, it's an economic imperative. We need to mainstream catchment management into planning processes. We must strengthen land use controls in our water-sensitive areas. Already, Mkhize is working with NGOs and landowners to restore wetlands, clear alien trees, and support payment for English is struggling at the end of the day, and support payments for ecosystem services. But we need to scale this, and we need science that gives us the knowledge on how to do this, where it works, and how to make it most effective. So I want to invite you, bring your catchment methodologies, your satellite data, your predictive tools. Help us build a catchment management approach that's integrated, inclusive, and resilient. The golden thread that runs through all of these issues is partnership. Science cannot succeed in isolation. While your journals may be great, they are just journals until the science is implemented through governance. And government cannot do it alone, because let me tell you, politicians don't know much about grasslands. But together we can reimagine the future. I know there's a lot of young scientists here. Your work matters deeply. You are not just future academics, you are future problem solvers, policy advisors, ecosystem healers. Whether your tools are drones, soil probes, or interviews in rural areas, keep going. Your country does need you. To the senior scientists, those are the guys with the gray hair, please help us translate research into action. Local government needs evidence-based tools, policies, and training, most of all. Help us make science understandable and usable so that we can govern more effectively. To the community leaders and government officials here, we must do more to integrate science into our decision-making and empower communities to become custodians of the land that they inhabit and pass on to future generations. So in closing, let me offer this. A healthy municipality is not just one with paved roads and functioning services, although those are very good as well. It is one where people and nature thrive together, where rivers flow clean, grasslands grow strong, and communities take pride in protecting what sustains them. That is our vision here in the Mkhize municipality, and we hope it is a vision that we can build together with scientists like you as our partners. So thank you for choosing Mkhize, and I wish you all the best on your Congress. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. That was a really informative and enlightening address. Thank you very much. And I'd like to, thanks. And I'd like to give you a small token of our appreciation. Thanks. Thank you very much, Chris. Right, can I ask Dr. Ntuthuko Mkhize to come up, please, and deliver his presidential address. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Kevin. Looks like I'm a bit too loud. Okay. Thanks again, Kevin, and let me greet our executive mayor of Mkhize local municipality, Chris Pappas. Where are you now? Oh, there you are. You know what? As I was standing there listening to you speaking, Pappas, I was like, this guy stole my speech. What happened here is, I'm very honest that you'll see it when it happens, when it unfolds later. This guy came here and gave a very scientific speech. And here I am coming here and I'm going to give you a very political speech. If you don't believe me, it's fine. Then later you'll realize that what I'm saying is true. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to this 60th annual Congress of the Grassland Society of Southern Africa, the GSSA. I'm deeply honored to stand before you as your president, especially in a strategic and significant conference as this, which is our Diamond Jubilee. Today, as we gather here, we are not gathering only to share science, but we also gather here to reflect, to renew, and to recommit ourselves to the vision and the values that have kept us together for 60 years. And having this conference here at this venue in Pietermaritzburg, actually in this city, is particularly significant because this is where it all began. This city hosted our founding members, guided by sharp vision and an agency when they were recognizing the need for a professional society. And the society was going to advance rangeland and pasture science. So returning here this year and today is not just symbolic, but it is a homecoming. So in deciding on what I was going to share with you, I was tempted to report on the council's activities and achievements over the past year. And if I had chosen that option, I would not have run out of content because there's a lot of it that I would have reported here in terms of the achievements. I would have reported a number of them, but then I remembered that this conference is too big for me to come here and tell you what is going to be repeated by the office bearers tomorrow. It's our annual general meeting, AGM, at 4:30. So instead of me repeating that, I thought I should just invite you to that AGM tomorrow. Then I said, okay, since I'm not going to do that, let me survey the state of our knowledge in the various aspects of rangeland ecology and pasture management in all their multiple and shapeless, what Kevin once called amorphous facets. Oh, when he said that, he was referring to the GSSA itself, but also referring to the grassland science because it's made up of different people from different backgrounds academically. So just as I was about to succumb to that kind of temptation, I quickly remembered that we have recently released the GSSA's 60th anniversary special issue through our ever-growing African Journal of Range and Forage Science. This special issue brings together a collection of papers reflecting the evolution of rangeland science in Southern Africa and beyond. All the key challenges and emerging trends are competently captured in that special issue. And the future research directions are also thoughtfully shaped still in that issue. Maybe let me take this moment and pause here and thank our editor-in-chief, Ers, for guiding this process of producing this issue, but also just working very hard in making sure that our journal stays on top. Let me also thank Kevin, Craig Morris, and Helga van der Merwe for their sterling job that they've done as guest editors of the special issue that I've just talked about. Again, let me ask you to help me thank the authors of the papers that were written in that special issue. Those people went through thousands and thousands of articles that were published in our journals, all the way from 1965 to date. And they, through those publications, what they did, I'm trying to check where I am in my speech now. Okay, here, I found it now, yes. What they've done is they've actually mapped our past and illuminated our path forward for grassland science. So I decided to talk about 4 themes because I know now you are wondering, so what did you end up talking about then? So I decided to talk about 4 themes that emerged as I was browsing through the many past presidential addresses and reflections. And this offered me a window into the society's evolution. And why did I do that? I believe that in sharing this history, I will be taking the long-standing members of the GSSA down on a trip down memory lane, while at the same time, I'm actually equipping the young members of the GSSA with the history so that they know exactly where do we come from as a society. I'm doing this because I strongly believe in a proverb, an African proverb that says, a river that forgets its source will soon dry up. Let me say this again. A river that forgets its source will soon dry up. So that is why then we need to make sure that our young scientists are equipped with the history a very rich history that we have as a society. So let me go through my first theme. And I titled it GSSA as a society with a very strong sense of purpose. And I'm going to use different examples to show that. In his address, titled Conservation or Conversation in 1965, J.D. Scott, our very, very first president, provoked grassroots scientists that had gathered at that Congress in 1967. And they said, until farmers put our science into action, all our conservation talks and papers are just a conversation. Let me repeat it, because even though he said it so many years ago, it is as true now as it was true then, and vice versa. He said, until farmers put our science into action, all our conservation talks and papers are just a mere conversation. He then reminded the delegate of the agency. That agency was inherited from the Drought Investigation Commission report of 1923. Those who joined our Congress 2 years or 3 years ago when Kevin was speaking, I don't remember what town it was, but he did talk about this Drought Investigation Commission report. So this actually came up with a lot of recommendations. Those recommendations then forced this agency for something to be done. And it gave the GSSA delegates the original, what I will call marching orders at that time. And these were 8 enduring and timeless research themes that he suggested were supposed to be focused on in the coming decades. And the first one was restoration of degraded rangelands. He said we must do research in this area. We must do research in an area in grazing management, field burning, field fertilization. We must find solutions to control undesirable plants. He said we need to do research on fodder conservation because our farmers are struggling during the droughty months. He also said we need to identify suitable grasses for pasture. Lastly, he said cultivation and management of pastures must also be on our research agenda. Ladies and gentlemen, these themes remain our compass as we navigate our future, and they are still relevant even today. And if you do not believe me, just look at your book of abstracts and check the topics that you are covering. And you'll be surprised by the stark similarities that are there between what we are doing now and what they've already started talking about. That shows the sense of purpose and the vision. In the 1970s, the GSSA warned about water scarcity and fed degradation. One of the presidents in 1971 said, South Africa could never store more than 50% of its total water runoff. What a humbling reminder that water is a resource we cannot afford to waste. There was already at that time a clear understanding of how overgrazing, poor rangeland management, and alien invasive plants and bush encroachment locked us into that destructive ecological cycle. This system level thinking was ahead of its time. I hope you guys will agree with me. because this was thinking that was circulating already in the 1970s. Today, climate change intensifies these challenges. Changing rainfall patterns, increasing drought frequency, and putting ever more pressure on already stressed rangeland water systems. So we must increase our capacity to manage water wisely across landscapes. I recently read a paper that was written in 1966, and the paper was titled "Some Thoughts on Game Farming," where the author in this paper is making a compelling and then a very powerful case for the feasibility of game farming in South Africa. The fact that legislation aimed at supporting the commercial use of wildlife and biodiversity is only being finalized today in South Africa, 6 decades later, speaks volumes about the foresight of the scientists that we had in the society many years ago. And again, it also speaks volumes about the patience of their ideas. That idea has been patient enough to wait until now it's being considered in terms of having the meat from the wild animals being commercialized and being consumed more widely than it has been over the past few years. Another example, in 1987, Tainton anticipated a principle that is only now being widely explored in research. He argued that true conservation must be culturally and ethically embedded in the value system of the land users. He warned that top-down effort would fail without this integration, and he called for incentives that align conservation with survival. This insight still guides us today, and as we rethink the role of ethics in sustainable land stewardship. And if you do not agree with me that this principle is still being used, you need to go to Matatiel and see those organizations, ERS, see your meat naturally. They're using incentives to get the farmers to do the right thing in terms of protecting our resources. I'm sure there are many other organizations that are doing the same. These examples make it clear that we did not inherit just a society, guys, here, but we inherited a scientific community with a direction and a purpose. Our founding purpose was to unite all rangelands and pasture scientists under one professional banner, and that unity is our inheritance now. And we need to protect this inheritance and nurture it with everything that we have. My second theme now is going to be one rangeland and one future. Maybe for me to make sense of this theme, I need to state that when the GSSA started, we were under a different political dispensation. Our population had two groups of different standards of living. We had a smaller group society that had a higher standard of living than the larger society. Back then, when anyone is discussing with the next person about farmers and rangelands, primarily they would be referring to a white commercial male farmer and their land. And that land was privately owned. That was the situation. When we talk about a farmer then, it was automatic. You were talking about a white male who's a farmer. It was nothing else. So as the living standards of the majority began to increase, so did the pressure on the food systems and the commercial grazing lands. By the 70s, mid-70s, population growth was already threatening food security, while felt condition continued to decline. And I do not need to remind you, ladies and gentlemen, that even today we are faced with a similar problem of a human population that is predicted to double by 2050. And that doubling is going to surpass our ability to provide food or produce food. It was only 1985 when Winston Trollope explicitly called for greater attention to the developing areas of the country. He argued that these areas, despite their poor fed condition and low livestock productivity, they too had an untapped potential and needed to play a role in feeding the region's rising population. So the GSSA recognized the historical imbalances and the emerging pressure on both commercial and developing landscape. For me, that is a vision of sustainable rangeland management for food security that was already born there. Now I'm moving on to my third and the most difficult theme, which is going to be grassland GSSA in a changing South Africa. The 1990s saw South Africa transformed. The GSSA had to adapt to many socio-political economic changes that threatened the collapse of this society, and not only the society, but the whole grassland science as a discipline. Let me take you through just 4 ways in which these changes, like I said, these are socio-political and economic changes. I'm going to give you 3 ways through which actually they, even though they were necessary as they were, they almost destroyed our vision. And our vision, if for those who may not know, is advancing rangeland ecology and pasture management in Africa. So the first change or implication of the change was a shift in funding priorities. Support for science and especially long-term ecological research declined as the attention shifted towards the short-term community-based development project. And these projects were aimed at supporting the previously disadvantaged and emerging farmers. This shift led to a reduction in dedicated resources for rangeland and forest science. With a shrinking institutional support, let me start afresh. With shrinking institutional support, even the GSSA began to feel the pinch. Membership numbers dropped from around 700 members back in 1994 to just above 300 members by 2001. And even though we have been increasing in our numbers over the years, there was a year when we were over 400 members. But at the moment, we are now around 215 members as a GSSA. You can see that we have never been able to go back to those 700 marks that we had in the past. But again, part of our numbers now being down can also be attributed to the COVID-19 setbacks that we had recently. As for financial implications, although GSSA finances were already a topic in the 1980s that I got from you, Zigran, from your speech, our poor financial situations got worse when we lost so many members. If it wasn't for your speech, I would already have said that this transition period was responsible for the financial situation, but at least you made it clear that already in the 80s, where they were already complaining about money. Again, another implication was institutional breakdown. Traditional research bodies such as the Department of Agriculture, the ARC, and even universities saw reductions in staffing, funding, and infrastructure. Research stations were closed or redirected to administrative or developmental tasks. There was this decentralization, or other people were calling it fragmentation, of research efforts across provincial rather than ecological lines. And this was disturbing the national scientific cohesion. There was a collapse of scientific capacity with a dramatic drop of up to 70%, even though this is just a rough estimate, in the number of skilled scientists that were active in the field. The dramatic drop was driven by, among other things, the mass resignations amongst staff members who were very demotivated. It was also driven by early retirement packages, people taking voluntary early retirement packages. And also, it was also driven by a record low morale among the workers. Everyone was demotivated at the time amongst the government employees and the employees in general, especially in our space. Many scientists left the discipline entirely, leading to a critical loss of experience and long-term research continuity. Grassland science or scientists were fast becoming, as Nico Smith said, an endangered species. So given that experience cannot be replaced overnight, today's GSSA must critically reflect on whether our efforts over the years to deal with this continuing brain drain have been sufficient enough to get us to the promised land. And the promised land is our vision, ladies and gentlemen. It would be silly of me if I did not reflect on how the GSSA, especially the leadership, responded during those difficult years. Those years were marked by political sensitivity and widespread self-censorship. You could not just say anything anyhow. You had to mind yourself every time you have to speak because of this sensitivity that is there. Strategic planning sessions were initiated for the first time. The GSSA began to question its relevance in the changing landscape. There were frank debates and difficult decisions that were taken across multiple and communicated across multiple platforms. And it became clear at the time that only the attitude of the members and of the employers and the employees was going to determine whether we survive as a society or we collapse. And we chose to adopt an attitude that was going to help us survive. Leadership now started calling us into action, reminding us that credibility must be earned, it's not assumed. And they reminded us that the GSSA must take full responsibility for its future. No one is going to do it for them. And the central idea during those days amongst the leaders, starting all the way from Nico Smith to Kevin Kekman and others in between, the Hart and then Good Enough and others, it was clear up to 2006 or so, where even Mark Hardy also emphasized this, and he says, the central idea is that we need to adapt to new realities while building on the past strengths. As a result of strategic and visionary leadership, the GSSA joined forces with other societies and leveraged each other's resources. In 2002, which was a very strategic move, the society hosted its very first joint congress with South African Society of Animal Science, SASAS. This helped us a lot, especially with re-establishing ourselves locally in terms of our credibility. But the successful hosting of the 2003 International Rangelands Conference, IRC in Durban, the same conference that many people had gone to Australia to attend this year, once was here in South Africa, in Durban, and it was organized mainly by our members. For me, ladies and gentlemen, I think that conference was a turning point for us, because that is the conference that brought back a lot of morale amongst people, and it also brought that credibility that we needed internationally. And since then, the GSSA members such as Tony Palmer, such as Ikshan Samuels and others, I'm sure, Susie, I should have also written you in here because you have been involved with the IRC since, for many years, I'm sorry, not since, but for many years now. So these people now have been serving on the IRC's continuing committees representing Africa. In 2007, staying true to our spirit of collaboration, the GSSA organized its Congress jointly with the Ticket Forum. I'm sure those who are old enough remember that conference in Grahamstown. For me, I remember it very well because it was the year when my mentor, Peter Scoggins, standing there, took me to that conference for the first time in Grahamstown, hosted by yourselves, Susie. Over the last 2 decades, the GSSA has hosted many research skills workshops and short courses to equip members and students. Strategically, we introduced awards such as the Norman Redmond Planted Pasture Award, Grassland Scientist Award, Peter Edwards Award, and many others. And these awards, like I said earlier on, were strategically introduced to serve specific goals, and those goals ranged from encouraging scientific excellence to maintaining close ties with the land users. Some of them actually also were just introduced so that they can improve our comradeship amongst us, like the ones, it's called FOPOC, Yes, so that at least we can have that camaraderie kind of a spirit amongst ourselves. We have become a society that values student achievement, have I? Yes. We also value interdisciplinary collaboration and farmer outreach. Our journal now contributions have reflected this evolution for over years. For example, by 2010, ecological research made up 70% of the publications, while communal rangeland studies had grown up to 22%, with increasing inputs from across Africa and beyond. Today, smallholder and communal farmers are firmly part of our research agenda. And if you again do not believe that, you should realize that it is even reflected through our having a special session dedicated to communal rangelands at this conference we are attending now this week. Someone once said, "What doesn't kill you makes you stronger." The GSSA is a living proof of the truth. Decades of challenge and renewal have shaped us into a more resilient, inclusive, and a strategically focused society. We are now better equipped to face future uncertainties while holding firmly and tightly to the legacy of our past. If anyone here doubts that, please remember how quickly and how smartly we responded to the COVID-19 pandemic some few years ago, led by Debbie. Where are you, Debbie? You led us, and we proved that we are now a more resilient society. Within a matter of months, we were able to deliver a fully fledged online conference. A conference that we'd never done before. We'd never done an online conference before. And we did it as it appeared as if it was seamless and effortless, yet a lot of effort was expended. And we emerged stronger from that experience. We emerged with a lasting gift of delivering world-class hybrid conferences like the one we are having today. It's a hybrid conference, and we would not have had it if it was not for the COVID experience that we had. One of our greatest strengths as GSSA is our diversity. Diversity across races, gender, geography, training, skills, generations, and also diversity in terms of the lived experiences. Our diversity, guys, is a treasure that we must actively nurture and not take for granted. We each must commit ourselves to mutual respect. We must be free of prejudice and negativity. We need to commit ourselves that we are going to help each other, not just for the benefit of ourselves, but for the benefit of the discipline, the GSSA, and humanity. All our founding members have retired now. Most of them have also even passed on, with the latest being Prof. Winston Trollope, who passed on last year in December. There is a saying that behind every great man is a strong woman. Tonight, we feel blessed to be joined by the strong woman who has been the wind beneath Prof. Trollope's wings over the many years that they've been together. I don't know where she is now. Where? Lynn Trollope, please. As a society, we really thank you for that, because we know that Prof is a guru that he is, but it would not have been the case if it was not for your support and the effort. Prof. Trollope's passing followed the passing of Prof. Neil Tenten in 2023. So on behalf of the GSSA now, I extend our deepest condolences to these families and the families of all the founding members who have passed on. While we mourn their passing, we are happy that they lived. And because they lived, the world became a better place for many of us. So what worries me now is that there are students and mentees who have been keeping this society over the past 3 decades alive. These students and mentees have started to retire. So I want each and every one of these guys who are about to retire, because these guys have been privileged to have been trained by these pioneers. So my question to them is whether they have trained and mentored their successors. And if they did, if the answer is yes, if they've done it properly, and if the answer is no, that will be a risk, because they will be risking leaving behind a rich legacy with no one to carry it forward. And to those retiring and those who have retired so already, please ensure that the decades of your knowledge and innovations do not quietly disappear as soon as your careers end. I'm saying this because we have seen such cases, and it's always very, very bad to observe such things. I firmly believe in the principle that invention is unnecessary where function is sound. Let me repeat this again. Invention is unnecessary where function is sound. I'm worried that we have abandoned some initiative that once served us very well in the past. We must revive the farmer-facing platforms that we once had, like the Farmers' Days. We need to consider reinstating the Peter Edwards Award, because that award was not just there for just a tradition, but that award made sure that our relevance is measured by how well the land users adopt our innovations. We need to reclaim our society's visibility, ladies and gentlemen, not only in academic institutions, but also in the farms, on the farms, in homes, and within the communities that we find ourselves. And in the same breath, let us reclaim the grassland science in our academic institutions. We cannot afford a situation where we cannot afford where we trained animal scientists who do not know anything about grassland science. And we cannot also afford a situation where we train grassland scientists who know nothing about animals. Last year, the GSSA hosted the Mountain Policy Workshop, which spotlighted the rapid spread of woody species in the mountains and mountain catchments and their impact on water, biodiversity, and livelihoods. A few months later, in February this year, our dedicated members, led by Rolf Clark, our colleague who's based in the Free State, submitted a policy brief to the Ministers of Agriculture and Environmental Affairs. They were calling for a coordinated transboundary response. I'm using this as an example of an indication that the GSSA is actually proactively shaping the future. As you already know by now, the United Nations declared 2026 as the International Year of Rangelands and Pastoralists. This word always wants to bite my tongue. And then in short, they call it IYRP. This gives the GSSA an unprecedented global platform, especially since our own member, Ikshan, serves as the global co-chair alongside over 300 organizations, including the GSSA. This shows that the world, guys, values our scientific leadership. Colleagues, this IYRP 2026 is our moment. Let us seize it. This platform allows us to shape global policy, to amplify African voices, and to influence decisions and affect rangeland livelihoods and the ecosystems. Despite all these positive developments that I've just talked about, I want to say this: we cannot afford to be complacent. There is still a lot of work to be done. We still need to increase the Congress attendance. We need to increase GSSA membership, particularly among the young scientists and early career professionals. Let us strive for excellence in everything that we do as individuals, because after all, society is its members. So as the GSSA strives for excellence, it will start with me and you at our individual level. COVID has also taught us that even in isolation, meaningful connections are possible. The visual space gives us tools to expand our reach, grow membership, and deepen our impact. Let us use these tools, but let us not abuse them. So let us use them ethically. Let me close with a call, but this is not any call to action here. I'm calling you, ladies and gentlemen, to believe. A belief that we, the GSSA, hold in our hands the tools, the talent, the skills, the years, the networks, the confidence, and the vision to shape a brighter future for the rangelands and for the people who depend on these rangelands. We have a legacy that is worth protecting here. We have a future worth investing in. Maybe talking about investing, let me take this moment. Let me take this moment and thank all those who have sponsored this Congress in one way or another, including the organizing committee. If you are wondering then about how you too can contribute, we have several council positions that are now open for nominations. And these include the vice president, the grassroots editor, the grassroots sub-editor, additional member, and also a treasurer. Although her term has lapsed, our current secretary, Robin Nicolay, has generously offered and agreed to avail herself for re-election, and we are grateful for her continued commitment. And nominations, ladies and gentlemen, are going to be closing by tomorrow lunchtime. So as I now prepare to sit down, or stand up because we're standing here. Let me remind you that J.D. Scott warned us, and he said, without real action, conservation efforts become a mere conversation. So many of our conversations, may our conversations at this conference this week inspire tangible change. Enjoy the conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ntuthuko. We've had two very inspiring speeches, firstly by the Mayor, Chris Pappas, telling us exactly what the problems are in the communities, in the areas that we serve, and then Ntuthuko giving us some insights as to how us as scientists, as part of the Grassland Society of Southern Africa, have attempted to address these issues over the years with some pointers of how to move forward. So thank you very much for that to both of the speakers. I was going to draw attention to the special issue that we have just recently published, but Ntuthuko has already done that. But I would like you to please to have a look at that special issue. It's got some really good historical articles that look backwards as well as looking forwards. So many of the sentiments in those articles reflect what has been mentioned and spoken about by both of the speakers today. So please go and have a look at that special issue. It is available at the moment. Then I'm going to end off with one or two housekeeping issues. Tomorrow morning, schools start tomorrow, and the roads are going to be quite busy. So for those of you who are not staying at the hotel, please allow a few extra minutes, or 10 or 15 minutes, because Hilton Avenue in front of the hotel gets quite busy. Maybe the mayor needs to make a double lane road or something. But there will be traffic tomorrow, so please make allowance for that. Those of you that are coming in with your own vehicles, there are tickets. If you haven't got a ticket yet at registration, there's a ticket with the GSSA logo on, which will get you through the hotel entrance a little bit quicker than scanning your driver's license and your license disc. So please have that ready. If you don't have one of those, please make sure that your license is ready and not buried somewhere at the bottom of your wallet, in your pocket at some distant end of the car, just to get in quickly. The venue tomorrow is going to be this venue. So this is going to be transformed tonight into a Congress venue. It's going to be quite tight in terms of seating. So when you come in tomorrow, please don't leave seats open. Just cuddle up to the person next to you and make sure that people don't have to squeeze past you to get into your seats. In other words, move right to the middle and make sure that any latecomers can get into the sides. Okay, I'm sure you all understand exactly what I mean. You've all been irritated by having to get past somebody to get to a vacant seat. Posters, those of you that are presenting posters tomorrow, the poster boards will be up outside here, and there will be some students available to assist you with directing you to the right poster board and put your poster up in the right place. Please do that early, and then posters will come down at the end of the day, and the next lot will go up on the following day. So posters will be up for one day only. Okay, I think that's about the end of the housekeeping. It's probably a bit late, but the toilets are sort of behind me here. And so if you go out to the left, turn left again, and you will find the toilets. That might be important for tomorrow as well. Okay, thank you, ladies and gents. Please continue enjoying the rest of the evening. We will, in a short while, migrate from here to the foyer and to the bar area of the hotel so that the hotel staff can start to get this venue ready for the Congress tomorrow. But enjoy the rest of the evening, and thank you very much for coming. And thanks to the Mayor, Chris Pappas, for making the time to attend. And we really valued your speech. Thank you very much.